Hello everyone, this video will cover Module 3. So Module 3 is the module where you will write and submit your argument proposal essay. So as you can see, the module just has the one assignment. Your argument proposal essay needs to be submitted by the end of the module, so you have the entire week to write it. Now in Module 2, if you remember, you did this pre-writing journal. And so that was intended to help you find your topic for the argument proposal essay. So the first thing you want to do is go back and look at the journal and kind of see what my feedback is. I try to grade any type of pre-writing like immediately after the module ends. That way students can get feedback right away and kind of know whether or not their topic will work for the essay. And so once you kind of have, you don't necessarily need my approval, but once you look back at what I've said for your pre-writing journal and then anything else that's been graded, then you can start working on the essay itself. So the essay, just as a reminder, what you're doing is you are arguing for a solution to a problem. So you want to clearly identify the problem, but then your solution needs to be really thinking about, how could that be implemented? If you would like to see a policy change, what's that going to affect? Who's going to need to, approve the policy? And, what steps are going to need to be taken in order to make that change? Is the change going to cost money? If so, where does the money come from? So all of those little things that you would need to really think about if you were to propose a solution to a problem. And just like I've said in the last video, the more specific you can make this, the easier it is to write this essay. So you can think about something in your local community pretty easily, I think would be a good idea. So like in our newspaper in Osage County, for example, there's a big argument about solar farms. Solar wind farms is not a thing. Solar farms coming in and industrial sized ones. And so there's, a lot of the pros and cons, but that would be just for this county. And so rather than looking at like the pros and cons of solar farms in general, I would focus on just whether or not Osage County, should or should not approve of the solar farm if I'm in favor of it, because that would be, that argue for a problem or solution to a problem, the problem being, lack of energy sources in the county or lack of revenue in the county, then that would be one solution too. So I'm looking at something very specific, but I'm also thinking about how does this, rather than arguing about the topic itself, what is the solution that I'm trying to push forward in the essay, or support in the essay. So you've got lots of things to think about here. Making sure that you have, this is supposed to be a fairly short essay, which is another reason why we're doing that argument proposal instead of just an argument. An argument proposal tends to be a little bit more specific and isolated because we're arguing just for this one solution to this one problem. You want to have at least 3 body paragraphs, so make sure you follow that kind of 5-paragraph format, 3 body paragraphs. Each of the body paragraphs will cover one kind of main idea that you want to emphasize about the solution, and then don't forget to cover that opposing viewpoint. But that's what really makes it an argument, is looking at any objections that might be the major objections that might be brought up, and then what is your refutation, or maybe a trade-off might be needed instead of, we may not have the money, but what are some things that we can do to earn the money, that kind of thing. Or are there steps that could be taken? A lot of times, let's say you would argue for a new school building or a new playground or something like that. A lot of times those things are taken in stages. And so the trade-off is we don't do it all at once. We do it in stages, and then that way we can earn the money as we go. So that kind of thing. Make sure that your argument can be supported with your 2 credible sources, and that you have at least 1 direct quotation and 1 paraphrase. Now that MLA assignment back in the previous module, once I grade that, you'll see whether or not you're doing that correctly. And so I also have a page here that just kind of goes over some tips for MLA style. because a lot of times students will come into this class. I get a variety of students. Those who you have taken Comp 1, especially with me, who've gone through, what is MLA documentation, then you should be fairly prepared to do this. But I get other students who've taken maybe only classes where they used APA style. And so like I've got down here some article about APA versus MLA, what are the differences? They're very similar. And so if you know one, it's pretty easy to do the other. However, you have to pay attention to what you're doing. And so you have to adjust how you're presenting the style in order to meet the requirements. So for example, in APA, you use years. You put the year in the parentheses. In MLA, you do not. And so that's one of the major things that I see students doing is if they're using some kind of program, since APA starts with A, that's the first option that pops up. They just copy and paste that without even paying attention to whether or not it meets the requirements. So you want to make sure that you're doing that. And then I've got some other examples here, particularly if your source does not start with an author. I've got some examples for, this is what the works cited page would look like. This is what a sentence would look like in the couple of sentences. This is what it would look like in the essay, noting, of course, that I've highlighted just for emphasis, that you would keep using that same thing over and over again to reference the source. So that's just there to help you out a little bit. If you have questions, you can always send me an email. I also have a link to the online writing lab. We use this BrainFuse online tutoring support page here. Later in the semester, you will have to use BrainFuse for one of your essays, but this is an option. And it's basically just here if you want some additional feedback, since we are not doing a peer edit. Just make sure that you give them at least 48 business hours to respond, which does mean that during the summer it's a little bit harder for a lot of students, because you have to get your essay done like basically at the beginning of the week in order to use it. But just go into BrainFuse, click on that link. It'll show you the web page. You'll see a submit paper in the writing lab box, and then you'll fill out the form and send it in, and then they'll respond within 48 hours. So that's a useful tool for students. A lot of students take advantage of that. And then this is, of course, the one assignment, which is to submit the actual essay. You can see the rubric that I use to grade it. Just as a reminder, it does go through that Turnitin plagiarism tool, which also has an AI detector. So you can use that AI detection resources if you want to double check and make sure that your essay is not being flagged for AI. So if you have any questions, send me an email. Otherwise, have a great week.